Today I'm going to be talking about Brusho crystal color, including options for how to prepare your Brusho bottles, 3 basic methods for applying Brusho, and options and tips for the project I'll be sharing today with some examples. At the end of this video, I'll tell you how you can get my Brusho crystal color tip sheet, which will summarize everything I've shared with you today, plus more. So make sure to watch to the end, and I'll tell you how you can get it. So Brusho Crystal Color is my absolute favorite new product in the Occasions catalog, and so I'm super excited to share it with you today. So let's get started. So you can see in front of you 2 sets of Brusho bottles. This one here on the left was is my set, and when I first got them I was really excited, and I just dove right in and started poking holes. They had told us, said on stage, to just poke holes, so I didn't think too much about it. I just started poking holes. So I poked a bunch of holes, and then I actually wrote the name of them on the front just so that I have a point of reference. And then I started watching videos about Brusho, and someone, Patty Bennett actually, recommended that you just poke 1 hole, and I poked holes with the paper piercing tool, and you kind of make them a little bit on the bigger side, bigger than the ones I did here, and then you just have 1 hole and you put in a coordinating push pin, and then you have a little bit more control, so it's a little bit less comes out at the same time with 1 hole versus a bunch of holes. Both work just fine. So there's my close-up of all the holes. So on this one, you can also, and this is the 3rd method, you could open it up and then just use a dry brush to tap in there a little bit and pull up a little bit of the crystals, and then tap it onto whatever you're working on. So that's it for the ways to use your bottles and to prepare. So there are 3 most common or basic methods that I've seen for Brusho to be applied. For this next segment on fast speed, I'm going to show you the 3 most common methods for applying the Brusho that I've seen. The first is to simply sprinkle your watercolor paper with a little bit of Brusho. Here I'm using the Prussian blue, and then I'm just going to sprinkle it with some water. And I've masked the watercolor paper so the rest of the paper doesn't get wet. And the next method is to apply some water directly to the watercolor paper, and here I'm just creating a little rectangle with my aqua painter, and then I'm going to sprinkle the Brusho onto it. This controls a little bit more where it goes, and then I can always brush off with my dry brush the excess specks that are on the watercolor paper. And then for the last method, I've created a paint palette by just sprinkling some Brusho into my palette, and then putting a little droplet of water using my aqua painter into the Brusho, and then creating a palette for myself. I've done a display of all the colors done in exactly the way I just showed you. So the other thing that you can do, which is super fun, and that's just what I just showed you is all the specific pure colors, but you can also mix the colors. And so I want to show you some things you can do with mixing. So in this case, I did the Brilliant Red and Prussian Blue 1-to-1, and you get sort of a purple, and 1-to-1 Yellow and Prussian Blue to get the green, and so on and so forth. Down here, I'm using 2 parts of the Prussian Blue and 1 part of the Brilliant Red, and that gives you sort of this burgundy color, and you can add as much or as little red as you want. It's very approximate, that 1-to-1 and 2-to-1. You have to kind of play with the mixing. So again, what I did was I created a little palette for myself. So this has a little, it's supposed to be 1 part of red and 1 part of the blue, and there's still lots of color in there, so I can actually still pull it up because it really goes a long way. I just want to let you know that you do need to use watercolor paper or a shimmer cardstock, any paper that can handle a good amount of water. And do be aware that the Brusho can stain your clothes, so just be careful, or when you're doing it at home, wear some old clothes. And the crystals just have a way of kind of appearing in places where you don't even realize they are. That's just kind of how they are. So you might want to just try to replace your work surface periodically if you don't want to mix the colors unintentionally. So Brusho reacts with water, so the more water you use, the more the crystals react. And another recommendation that I heard about was when you're mixing the colors to limit the mixing to 2 colors, otherwise your colors will get muddy. So moving along to the projects we're going to do today. So club members got to pick 2 out of the 3 color schemes you see here. Plus I'll be showing samples made with both the Beautiful Day and Remarkable You stamp sets. So now on fast speed I'm going to show you 3 different focal pieces made with the Remarkable You stamp set, done in 3 different ways. So you see me here, of course, just stamping that initial image. And I will say that you do need to make sure your stamp is inked up really well with the archival black, and you're doing it on the watercolor paper. So the watercolor paper is more textured than regular paper. It's not as smooth. So you'll want to make sure to press nice and hard in the center to make sure you get a nice crisp image. So I'm starting here with just coloring in my images with water. When you're using watercolor paper, water is one of the key ingredients. So I started by wetting it, and the crystals are going to really just stick to where the water is. So they may be on the outside of the flower, but they won't stay there unless you wet them. So I started with my yellow Brusho, and then I did the orange Brusho. The next thing I'm doing is spraying my focal piece with a spray bottle. It's sort of a little bit off camera, so maybe you didn't notice, but what that does is it blends the colors, but it also makes the specks that are on the outside of the flower show where they might not have before. And now I'm coming in with my aqua painter to just kind of move some of the color around and do some touch-ups. So for this next focal piece, as you see, I've oriented it differently. I'm going to go in and wet the whole thing again, and instead of doing what I did prior, I'm going to take my little paint palette. Remember, I put some specks of each of those colors into the little spots in my paint palette, put a little droplet of water in there, and then I just go in and pull the color up. So if you don't have Brusho, you can just do some simple watercoloring with the ink from your ink pad, and you're essentially doing the same thing that you see me doing here. So my flower images are wet, so I'm going to now come in and sprinkle some orange Brusho onto the flower, and I'm tapping off the excess and brushing some off with a dry brush. Now I can stop right there, or I can keep playing with it. So for this final demonstration, I'm going to use the most haphazard of the 3 methods, and that is to spray the whole piece with water, which I just did, and then just start sprinkling some Brusho on. And I just started with the blue, and now I'm going to do green, and these are the only 2 colors that I'm going to use on this. So I'm just going to kind of go back and forth and apply color as I see fit. And now I'm spraying it to kind of blend the colors and move them around. And now I'm touching up a little bit with the aqua painter, coloring in some of the spots to make them more solid. And as you can see, I just pulled up a little bit of my green from my paint palette and some of my blue from my paint palette. So you will need paper towels handy for this, both to dab off your aqua painter and change out colors, and also to soak up some extra droplets of water or color as you wish. So in the process of teaching this in my club's classes and to my demonstrator group, I've created quite a large number of samples. As you will see, each one turns out completely unique. And while you check these out, I'm going to finish up with a few details. So as you look at these samples, I'm sure you'll notice that except for the first few, they're all exactly the same layout, just in different color schemes. And some of them are attached, the piece is square, and others are attached at an angle, sort of wonky. But they each look like their own unique, fun projects, so I hope you enjoy checking them out. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about Brusho, first of all. To get my Brusho tip sheet, simply click on the link in the description below the video and sign up to receive my emails. As a reminder, this is one of my online and in-person Stamp Club projects. My club members either made these in person or will get these as a class to go. Club members also get hostess benefits once during the club cycle, plus exclusive access to additional resources through my Stamp Club VIP's Facebook page. For details about Club, see the video description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with friends, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me today, and happy crafting!